The elderly man entered the courtroom in handcuffs, his weathered face lowered. "Name?" asked the court clerk. He answered with a trembling voice. "Mason Quinn, Sergeant, United States Marine Corps." No one expected what happened next. A few minutes later, as the judge was going through the file, she suddenly froze. Her face lost all color. That name belonged to the man who had saved her brother's life on the battlefield of Fallujah before making the ultimate sacrifice. Respect if you believe that honor does not fade just because we grow old or become poor. Mason Quinn, 69 years old, sat on the bench in the courtroom. His shoulders slumped under an outdated military jacket that was 2 sizes too big. The harsh neon lights highlighted deep wrinkles carved into his once proud face by years and the hardships of life. Decades ago, he had stood tall in his uniform, medals on his chest. Today, he awaited judgment in clothes from a homeless shelter donation box. Charges, testimonies, and the harsh reality. The bailiff called his case Dossier 47B, City versus Mason Quinn. Charges: disturbing the peace, trespassing, resisting arrest. Mason pushed himself forward, his movements stiff from arthritis and old wounds that never fully healed. Vietnam first, then Iraq for his second tour. Visible and invisible wounds carried quietly over the decades. "Mr. Quinn," began the prosecutor, a young man with perfect teeth and a tailored suit, "was repeatedly warned for noise and disturbances behind the Jefferson Street Cafe. The owner filed 3 complaints this month." What the prosecutor did not mention was that Mason merely sat quietly behind the cafe, warming himself by the kitchen vent on particularly cold nights. He never begged for money, never disturbed customers. He just sought a moment of warmth when December temperatures fell below freezing. Officer James Reynolds, who made the arrest, spoke next. "I found the defendant at 11:45 p.m. behind the cafe. He refused to leave when asked." Mason hadn't refused. He had simply asked for 5 more minutes to finish the half sandwich secretly given to him by the cook. But now arguing seemed pointless, just like back then. "Your Honor," said Prosecutor Ford, "this is the defendant's 3rd offense this year. We recommend community service and a 30-day ban from the downtown district." A ban would mean Mason would lose access to the homeless shelter on 4th Street, the only warm bed he had known for months. It would also mean no more meals at St. Luke's Church on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It would mean true isolation in the coldest months of winter. A new turn in court. "Mr. Quinn," Judge Olivia Parker addressed him directly. "Do you have an attorney?" Mason shook his head. The public defender assigned to him was tied up with an emergency hearing in another courtroom. "Would you like to make a statement on your own behalf?" the judge asked, peering over her crescent-shaped reading glasses. Mason cleared his throat. His voice sounded rusty from rare use. "No excuses, Your Honor. I'm just trying to stay warm." "Is there a particular reason you chose that location?" the judge continued, her face unreadable. "The cook," Mason hesitated. "Jimmy, he sometimes gives me food. I've known him since he was a kid. His father served with me in the Gulf War." "And your military service?" Judge Parker asked, though this information was typically irrelevant in such proceedings. "United States Marine Corps, 1975 to 1995. Staff Sergeant, 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, in Iraq." The words came automatically, a moment of clarity and pride amid the confusion. The judge made a quick note, then continued reading through Mason's file. Something in the personnel file caught her attention. Before she could speak, however, the courtroom doors opened. A distinguished man in an expensive suit entered the room. He approached the defense table, placed a leather briefcase down, and addressed the court. "Your Honor, Alexander Rossi for the defendant. I apologize for the interruption, but I've been retained to represent Mr. Quinn." Mason looked up, confused. He hadn't hired anyone. He couldn't afford a lawyer, let alone one in such a sharp suit. "This is highly irregular," Judge Parker remarked. "The court was not notified of this representation." "It's a very last-minute development, Your Honor," Rossi replied calmly. "I request a brief recess to speak with my client." Judge Parker studied the attorney, then looked at Mason. Her face remained unreadable. "The court will recess for 15 minutes, she declared, rising swiftly to return to her chambers. Mason turned to the stranger beside him. I don't have any money for a lawyer. You don't need any, Rossi replied quietly. The firm of Williams, Rossi, and Parker is handling your case pro bono. Mason furrowed his brow at the familiar name. Parker? Like the judge? Exactly like the judge, Rossi confirmed. In her chambers, Judge Olivia Parker removed her glasses with trembling hands. 20 years on the bench had taught her to maintain composure, no matter what appeared before her, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. It can't be the same man, she whispered, even though the details fit too perfectly. She opened a drawer in her desk and pulled out a worn photograph, her younger self next to her brother, Lieutenant Jack Parker, in his Marine uniform. Part 5. Truth in the Courtroom. His arm was around her shoulders. Both of them smiled broadly at his promotion ceremony. Jack's last letter from Iraq lay beside the photo, its paper thinned from countless readings. In it, he described a firefight outside Fallujah, where his unit was pinned down under heavy fire. If it hadn't been for Staff Sergeant Quinn, Jack had written, none of us would have made it out. He had run across open ground under heavy enemy fire to reach a fallen Marine, then provided cover fire so the wounded could be evacuated. 2 weeks after writing that letter, Jack was killed by an IED. Olivia remembered the military funeral, the folded flag handed to her parents, and the Marine who approached her afterward. Your son saved my life, he said. I was the one he dragged to safety. He never finished the sentence. He didn't need to. That Marine's name was Mason Quinn. After the funeral, Olivia had tried to contact him. She wanted to know more about her brother's final days, but the military informed her that Sergeant Quinn had been redeployed immediately. Later, she found out he had been honorably discharged due to severe PTSD and a traumatic brain injury during his last tour. And now, 20 years later, he sat in her courtroom, homeless, alone, unrecognized. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Alexander Rossi entered, concern on his face. Olivia, what's going on? He asked. As a former law partner of her late husband and a family friend, he was one of the few who still called her by her first name. It's him, Alex, she said, pointing at the photo. The Marine who saved Jack's life, who carried him out under fire. Rossi's eyes widened as the pieces clicked into place. The homeless vet in your courtroom? That's Mason Quinn? The one you've been trying to find for years? Olivia nodded. His service record confirms it. Fallujah, 2004. Same unit as Jack. He was awarded the Silver Star for the exact operation Jack described in his letters. Does he know who you are? I don't think so. I married Thomas after law school and changed my name to Parker. It's been 20 years. She paused, collecting herself. What happened to him, Alex? How does a decorated Marine end up homeless, sitting in my courtroom just for trying to stay warm? Rossi shook his head. From what I gathered in our brief conversation, he suffers from severe PTSD. His wife left him during a deployment. His VA claims got lost in the system. He worked construction for years until his injuries made it impossible. Then came job loss, foreclosure, eventually the streets. Olivia closed her eyes, remembering her brother's words. Quinn is the best of us, a man who would give everything for his brothers in arms without hesitation. If I can be half the officer he is, I'll consider myself a success. What are you going to do? Rossi asked gently. You could recuse yourself on grounds of bias. No, Olivia answered firmly. I won't let him disappear again. You know there are ethical concerns. I'm fully aware, she said, regaining her composure like the judge she was. But there are also ethical concerns in how we treat those who gave everything for this country. To be continued for Part 02, 66, and don't forget to like and subscribe.